welcome to our June 18th Board of Commissioners meeting. We will begin our meeting this evening with our invocation led by Vice Chairman Helms.
If you'd bow with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather here tonight to do the county's business. Give us guidance to conduct ourselves so that we are pleasing to you. Help this board to conduct our business so that we demonstrate our dedication to the best interest of our citizens. May our personal faith give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us. Please give special protection to law enforcement, firemen, military, and EMS so that we honor the service they provide to our community. Finally, dear Lord, grant us the humility to always seek your will in all that we do and say. In thy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. We have a special guest with us this evening. We have Adam, is it Pizzold? Pizzold, with Troop 9, chartered by St. Matthew Catholic Church. He's a new Eagle Scout, and he's going to lead us in the pledge. Come up, podium.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have several items of recognition this evening. Central Iowa Council of Governments wants to present us with a proclamation, and I believe we have Bobby Williams with us this evening to do that.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And if any of you have kids and you want to take the bubble wrap home, just let me know. We're celebrating our 50th year of existence this year, and as part of that, we are recognizing each of our 9-member counties. And for the month of June, we're celebrating Union County. And as you'll see on the plaque here, we have a proclamation, and then we've tried to highlight how our communities have changed and grown as everyone throughout our 9-county region has experienced a rapid amount of growth over the past 50 years. I'll hold it here, and then I'll read the proclamation. But we try to highlight the economical changes. Thanks, sir. Some of the educational assets that have grown and come to our communities, as well as just kind of the general fabric of our region. And we really appreciate the relationship that we've had with Union County, from workforce to working together from a community development, block grant, and home grant perspective. And then let me get to my proclamation, and we'll go in a little bit further. But I know you've got a full agenda tonight. We want to respect that. But our proclamation reads, honoring Union County. Whereas Union County, North Carolina is the 8th fastest growing county in the state, and Union County has a mix of rural charm and urban convenience that make it a positive environment for individuals and families to prosper. And whereas Union County offers easy access to regional and international airports and interstates, making it an ideal location for business growth. And whereas in 1968, Union County became a charter member of the Central Iowa Council of Governments, an organization that works to help communities grow jobs in the economy, control the cost of government, and improve quality of life. And whereas several municipalities in Union County have become very active members of the organization over the years, and whereas Union County and Central Iowa have worked together to deliver workforce development services through the NC Works Career Center in Monroe, support seniors through the Regional Ombudsman Program, and address growth-related needs through the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy and the Connect Our Future project. And whereas Central Iowa is proud to have Union County as a valued member and looks forward to continuing to partner with the county in addressing the community's needs, now therefore be it proclaimed, the Central Iowa Council of Governments dedicates the month of June 2018 to honoring Union County for its successes over the years and its collaborative work within the region. Thank you. very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby, for coming. I know I was spent several years with the executive board there at Council of Government, particularly when we were involved in Connect Our Future effort, and quite a lot of revealing information about our region and how we grow together. So thank you for making that distinction for Union County. We always take the opportunity to recognize those employees who have served us well and have tenure awards, and so we'll do that at this time. We have a relatively long list this evening. James Rape in Growth Management has 5 years. Daniel Persher, Administrative Services, 5 years. Mark Quiddley, Public Works, 5 years. Christopher Horn in the Sheriff's Office. Darrell Morris with the Sheriff's Office. Christopher Whited in the Sheriff's Office. And Joseph Whitley with the Sheriff's Office, all with 5 years. And Emily Parker and James Kiker in Human Services with 5 years. Aaron Brower and Richie Gnabel in Emergency Services, 10 years of service. Gary DeSantis in Human Services with 10 years. Sean Mayhew in the Sheriff's Office has 15 years service. Wayne Gagnon, Sheriff's Office, 20 years. And then we have some retirements. Ed Goshiski with Public Works, 9 years. Jeff Holzhauser in Community Services, 19 years. And Kevin Susevich in the Sheriff's Office with 8 years. So we thank our employees for their service and continued service. Thank you very much. We have a recognition of Michelle McCarver.
And actually, Michelle, would you like to come forward? And we have Marty Wilson representing the North Carolina Rural Water Association, who will be presenting the award this evening.
Great.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of Commissioners. My name is Marty Wilson. I represent the North Carolina Rural Water Association. North Carolina Rural Water is the largest provider of training and technical assistance for water and wastewater systems in North Carolina. And every year we have an annual conference, and at our annual awards banquet, we recognize professionals in the water and wastewater industry who have performed outstanding, have had outstanding job performance, and we've had nominations from the entire state. And this year, the winner of the award for administrative excellence was your own Michelle McCarver. Michelle has worked for the county for 14 years and provided administrative support for the Water and Wastewater Division. She lends support to the Division Director, Assistant Division Director, and all the water, wastewater superintendents, as well as other staff. And she is being recognized for her invaluable contributions to her organization. And I'll just read the award for administrative excellence is presented to Michelle McCarver for exemplifying creative, conscientious, and outstanding performance and dedication to the high standards of excellence in the office workplace. So I'd like to present this to Michelle, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Adam Pizzold with our Eagle Scout. Tell you a little bit about Adam. Come on back to the front there, young man. Adam recently achieved his Eagle Scout rank and is a member of, again, Troop 8, sponsored by St. Matthew Catholic Church. For his Eagle project, he worked with Messiah Lutheran Church on its preschool playground. His project involved pressure washing concrete, playground equipment, painting the playground equipment, and adding a truckload of sand and a truckload of mulch to the playground, installing shelving units in the storage barn, and organizing the storage barn. He's a rising senior at Marvin Ridge High School and is an avid numismatist. Is that close? Whoa, coin collector. Adam was recognized as the 2016 North Carolina Young Numismatist of the Year. So congratulations, Adam, on your attainment of the Eagle Award. Okay. We have a letter here signed by all the Board of County Commissioners, and I'll present that to you. And I will tell you what I told all my Eagle Scouts. I was once a Scoutmaster in a younger time. But what I told all my Scouts, Eagle Scouts, was you're not at the end, you're at the beginning. You've done well, you've trained well, but now your leadership is going to be put to the test. So.
Yes, sir.
Is that mom and dad in the back? If y'all want a better picture, you can come up.
Takes us to our informal comments, and we have no one signed up to speak this evening. So I believe we will go then to our additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda. I would ask that we remove item 20 from consent. That was some legal information. It's not quite ready, so we'll take that off the consent agenda this evening. Mr. Helms.
I'd ask that we move item 14, 27, and 29 to old business for a little further discussion. And item 21, if we can move that to new business, it's a resolution, and we've received some additional information today, and Bjorn Hansen, our transportation planner, can give us a little more information.
It was 14, 29, and
27 and 29.
27.
'29 is not on consent. That's under old business.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, well, thank you.
Uh-huh.
It is under old business? 27?
29 is.
14
Oh,
and
29, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
29
Okay.
is on under
Okay.
old business.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Akmus,
Motion to approve agenda as amended.
we have a motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And motion to approve consent as amended. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Take us to old business. Item 28.
This is a presentation by, I assume, is it you, Mr. Matthews, or is it Bjorn? As it relates to the North Carolina 16 widening bicycle and pedestrian accommodations, the board has talked about this project on a multitude of occasions as it related to some of our municipal partners, and Bjorn has additional information he would like to present to you this evening, and as well as an action that is being put forward for consideration.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak on this topic. This is an update from when it was twice presented. First was introduction of the issue in the fall of 2017 when the NCDOT said that the affected municipalities as well as the county along the NC-16 corridor would be asked to weigh in on its local preferences for bicycle and pedestrian accommodations along the corridor. Marvin, Waxhaw, Weddington, and the county got together in October to receive this information, subsequently met about 6 weeks later to review options. and since then went back and forth on differing scenarios because the four entities adopted locally preferred alternatives that were inconsistent. And so we had to hash out what the preferred alignments were for them so that we had some logical termini, because as you can see by the corridor, the municipalities in the county go back and forth, and so to have the cross sections zigzag like that would have been infeasible. So, and at the same time, the NCDOT changed its policy regarding bicycle lanes within the road itself. At the beginning of this process, they had said you can ask for bicycle lanes or you can go with the wide outside lanes. It makes no difference to us. It's not going to cost you anything differently. Waxhaw and Marvin both asked for bicycle lanes. Weddington and Union County did not. Later, the NCDOT changed its policy that would allow you to drop bicycle lanes and exchange that for a multi-purpose path, which was supported locally, but unfortunately it had quite a bit of additional cost and cost uncertainty related to it, so there was fear of and unwillingness to choose that cross-section. They later made it so that you could drop the bicycle lanes and add a multi-purpose path, which Marvin quickly took up and Waxhaw has recently adopted as well as its cross-section. Weddington has stayed with its original cross-section, which was sidewalks on both sides. You can see the breakdown by the local governments. Waxhaw is approximately half of the corridor. We're the second largest, and then Weddington and Marvin. So we have a local plan that called for a multi-purpose path along one side of the road. We had a lot of competing interests regarding cyclists versus pedestrians, maintenance as well, asphalt versus concrete. If we build this, or if we help pay for it to be built, it will be the responsibility of the municipalities and the county to maintain in the future. This is something new. This is the first time we've been asked to participate in the cost of one of these projects. And so the local share also changes by the municipalities and the county based on our populations, and we would be at a 40% share. The other municipalities would be 20 and 30%. And what's ended up being the guess I'll have to do extemporaneously, slide's not there. The recommendations that were made by Weddington, again, were for sidewalks on both sides. Marvin and Waxhaw have both called for a sidewalk on one side, a multi-purpose path on the other. The request of Union County is to have a consistent cross-section with Marvin and with Waxhaw, which would be to the tune of $154,000. That is a reduction from the initial cost because we were able to negotiate down and reinterpret what our local share is based on population. The NCDOT was originally basing it on our total population. We said, well, if we're being treated like a municipality, we should only have to look at the unincorporated population share. They agreed with that, so they dropped our share from 50-50 down to 60-40. And also, they gave us credit for the existing sidewalk approximately 700 feet in front of the Waxhaw-Nixon property that was rezoned late last year. Because that has sidewalks already existing, they would replace those as a part of that. And so that reduced our cost as well. That information was not known at the time. The final calculation was not known at the time of the agenda, so you'll see in the agenda packet it's approximately $163,000. In an email that was sent to us by the project manager late last week after the agenda packet was sent out, they confirmed the cost. That was $154,000. And the other good thing that they confirmed was that they had to determine how to treat us as a county versus the municipalities. The municipalities, because they receive Powell bill funds, they can wait until later to receive the money from them, because if the municipalities don't pay, they just take it out of their municipal distributions for maintenance purposes. That obviously doesn't apply to us because we don't maintain roads. So they would require the money earlier, but initially they thought they would need it in the right-of-way and utility relocation part of the project, which is earlier, and that was shown as FY19 and 20. They later said that we really won't need it until the construction phase. You're looking at FY22, which is obviously a couple of years later to have to come up with these funds. So two positive pieces of information: that they gave us credit for those sidewalks that they were previously crediting to the incorporated areas, and then also reassessing when the money would actually be due. Instead of earlier in the project, it would be due later. So it may be 1 or 2 years before the municipalities, but it's 1 or 2 years later, earlier than what they had thought they were going to ask us for to pay. So this is the update. They really would have rather had these positions several months ago. Unfortunately, it took quite a bit of negotiations between the municipalities and the DOT to figure out what cross-section they wanted and the implications of the costs of these different cross-sections. And so we've ended up with a situation that is good for the citizens along the corridor because it does have a multi-purpose path as well as a sidewalk. It doesn't have any risk to us about right-of-way or relocation costs. Those are completely covered by the DOT. We're only paying for construction. And regarding the maintenance, the multi-purpose path as well as the sidewalk are both going to be made out of concrete, which is obviously much more durable. So that was a pleasant surprise to receive as well. So you're asked to support this new cross-section so that we can communicate it to the DOT for design purposes, and then secondly, to support the agreement that we'd be entering into at a later date as a part of this project development.
Questions? Bjorn? Mr. Hales?
I'd like
Sure.
to make a motion
Sure.
to approve the cross-sections consistent with those adopted by the 3 municipalities and the future payment as was described.
We have a motion, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. And I apologize, we will make, thank you, Bjorn.
Thank you.
1428A and 2728B. Mr. Helms, item 14.
Yes, I would like a little more discussion on this and the fact that, in reading it, it gave me a little reservation in that we may be taken away from other projects, and I'd like to be ensured that projects that we had on the Capitol, I know we made modifications to the Capitol that were the 4-H, the sheriff's building, and the 911 center would be on a bond referendum. But I'd just like a little further explanation. I just got this Friday, and one of the things that probably caused me some concern was, in speaking with the Sheriff's Department, that they were told that their Phase 2 of the safety training facility was not included in our capital project, and I wanted to make sure that stayed in our capital project, and we've complete this, what I think is a very important facility.
I will let Mr. Yates speak directly to some of the items within the one-time expenditures. We did discuss this at your, I believe it was your May 11th budget work session, in which we identified that the way we were able to achieve the 2.5 cents tax rate reduction from county operations was identify monies that would not be expended in 2018 and actually put those monies to projects that were identified in 2019. That is part of it. As it relates to the sheriff's facility, that project, the action that the board took at your June 11th meeting, you identified 3 projects that were to move forward in 2018 as a bond referendum. The balance of the action that was taken, and I apologize, I believe it was in April, as it relates to the rest of the CIP, those remain unchanged. So the sheriff's Phase 2 of their firing range is still within the CIP with funding identified as other funding, which is what it was, how it was identified originally. Yes, sir.
That wasn't clear, and I appreciate you clarifying that.
So, as Cindy mentioned, we can talk about the one-time items. And these all deal with the 18 operating budget. And whatever the strategies we were able to deliver, we used to help us deliver a 2.5 cent tax reduction. is to identify one-time items that can be purchased in 2018 from unused appropriation. The biggest chunk of that was we had set aside, if you remember back in the 18 budget process, some funding to provide for runoff elections and other board of elections items that didn't come to fruition. So what we're recommending in this action is to use some of that unused contingency money to fund these one-time items and keep them out of the 19 budget, but go ahead and proceed with them as part of the 18 budget. In addition, there's a couple of other small items. As we get to the end of the year, we have to clean up the budgets to ensure that we have budget authority. The health insurance fund, the claims are a little higher than anticipated, so we've proportionally charged the funds for their increases in claims. So this item cleans that up and provides sufficient funding so that the health benefits fund doesn't run out of budget before the end of the year. And then the last item, if you remember back, I believe it was like 3 years ago, that we have an agreement with the school system where we provide their bus radios and maintain them. As part of that agreement, we purchased the system, they are paying us back. At that time, we did an inter-fund loan from the general fund to what we call the school's radio fund. This would forgive that loan and allow us then to build that balance in that fund for eventual replacement of that system so that we don't have to come with another large tranche of cash in another 3 or 4 years when it has to be replaced and or maintained. So this cleans up our books to allow that system to build fund balance for the eventual replacement of all the bus radios. And I can't give you a total number. Curtis can probably give you the total number of radios we have, but we think that's been a real successful partnership with the school system. So this just cleans up some of the bookkeeping related to that and clears it from the general fund ledger and gets it all isolated into that single fund. So that's all the actions that are on there. If you have a specific question, I'll be happy to answer it for you.
No, you answered it. Thank you.
Motion to approve that.
The action that staff is requesting is approve Budget Amendment 28 and forgive the interfund borrowing from the general fund to the school's radio budgetary fund in the amount of $835,000.
Accept that as a motion.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Takes us to 27. Mr. Helms.
Yeah, and like I said, a little further understanding of the process here, and an explanation as much as anything.
Sure. I'll be happy to answer it.
I'll answer the salary part. You can answer as it relates to the legal services. As the board will recall, when you adopt the budget, we appropriate all the monies associated with your pay-for-performance system into a single account. We then, once the merit increases are dispersed among the departments, we then make those appropriate adjustments to those budgets so that they have sufficient enough funds associated with the merit increases. The legal fees?
Yes, ma'am. A little background on these transfers, this specific group of transfers. If you remember in the budget ordinance, when the board establishes a contingency item for a specific purpose, it authorizes the manager then to transfer as needed for that specific purpose. So those comp and class and the salary reserves are for a specific purpose. If you remember back a few months ago, you established a legal reserve to cover unknown legal expenses at that time. So this is a transfer of funds from that contingency for legal services to the appropriate departments as they've been incurring expenses which are beyond the budget that they had for that. So these are all reserve funds which you had set aside for contingency items for these specific issues, and this is a reporting of those transfers per the budget ordinance.
And what's the magnitude of those?
The transfer for legal services was $44,000. The transfer for I'm sorry, it was a little more than $44,000. The one to growth management it's $53,000 in total, and then for the salary lines, In this case, it was $438,193, which was the salary and part of the comp and class study implementation as of April 1st. And it looks like
Was that the incremental increase? Is that what that is?
yes, sir. That's, you set aside $500,000 in total, and we transfer that full amount. And it looks like the remainder of the merit pool was about $330,000. So that's what was left over. We transferred at different times throughout the year because not everybody gets their increase on July 1. If you were not eligible on July 1, you become eligible during the year. We transfer that money out to cover that eligibility throughout the year. So from a couple of times a year, we try to clean that up a little bit and make those transfers. So those are all those transfers that occur.
And as Mr. Yates indicated, the board had authorized the manager in the past to approve these. This information is provided to the board as information items so that you are aware of what transfers the manager has approved.
That was, I believe, an information-only
Yes,
item,
sir.
so any further questions? Hearing none, we'll go to item 29.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. The recommended county manager's budget was submitted to the Board of County Commissioners on June 1 as required by statute and strategically positioned the county to provide effective and efficient services to the residents while focusing on the strategic objectives as adopted by the board. The manager's proposed budget was developed in response to direction received from the board through multiple work sessions that were held. The manager proposed budget included a 5-cent tax rate reduction, 2.5 cents from county operations and 2.5 cents from Union County Public Schools based upon county staff's analysis of Union County Public Schools fund balance and refunds. On June 11th, the board provided the following direction to staff regarding the budget. Prepare a final budget that uses a base tax rate cut of 2.5 cents as identified by the county manager on April 16th, 2018. Leave the current school rate of 44.5 cents in place with $6.5 million set aside in a capital for any voter-approved 2016 school bond project overages. Subtract the following projects from any current funding and bring a bond amount for a November 2018 vote for the Sheriff's Office expansion, noon 911 Center, and 4-H arena projects. Use the reserve money balance over our 20% policy to recommend any additional decrease in property taxes. In response to the board's direction, supplemental information was submitted to you on Friday, June 16th. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the information that was provided. The budget ordinance was amended to leave the tax rate to fund the schools at 44.5 cents and set aside the $6.5 million for any overages on Union County Public Schools 2016 bond projects. Any release of these funds will require the Board of Education to make a request to the Board of County Commissioners for your approval. Union County Public School Human Services Collaboration. During the original budget, we had recommended that $1.6 million be set aside while we worked out an arrangement with Union County Public Schools to meet the needs as identified by the schools. Michelle Lancaster and I had the opportunity to meet with the superintendent last Thursday, and based upon that meeting, we are amending our recommendation to the board, and this was in the supplemental information that was provided to you on June 15th. What that is we have amended our recommendation to provide Union County Public Schools $435,287 in funding for two school counselors, one lead counselor, and a stipend for a lead social worker, and funds for training of teachers in this particular area. Provide Human Services $1,178,048 for additional school social workers and mental health therapists. Union County Public Schools and Human Services will continue the dialogue and present the fully developed plan at the board's August 6th meeting. The unassigned fund balance of the county's 20% policy level is $10.44 million, which equates to 3.99 cents in tax rate. Fund balance represents cumulative savings over time. To put this into perspective, the change from fiscal year 2018, the fiscal year that we are presently in, based upon our projections, revenue over expenditure, is only $1,023,866. This is the true fund balance created from fiscal year 2018 to 2019, not the 10.44, which was created over a multitude of years. The 2018 bond referendum, staff has worked with the Board of Elections and the county's bond council to establish the deadlines and bond questions. The three projects included are the 4-H Pavilion project at $9,670,000 and does not include utilities infrastructure, the Sheriff's Office facility and renovations at $27,440,400, and the Emergency Services Facility 911 at $14,402,000. If the board chooses to move forward with the November 2018 bond referendum, staff recommends that the project costs be refined, construction schedules developed, and tax rate impact calculated. As your manager, I am concerned regarding further reduction of the tax rate that supports county operations, as in my opinion, it is not sustainable, as one-time funds will be used to fund ongoing operations. Since 2016, the tax rate to support county services has declined from 28.82 cents to the recommended rate that was contained within my recommended budget of 24.34 cents, or 4.48 cents over a 3-year span of time. The Local Government Commission on June 4th, 2018 indicated that the average fund balance amounts maintained by counties within the state of North Carolina is approximately 29%, is a prudent course for counties to take. The memo also discussed the Local Governments Commission view of financials and their specific interest when they observe a significant decline in fund balance as a warning sign of financial trouble. Moody's, in their Union County annual comment issued on June 15th, stated the financial position of the county is robust and in line with the assigned rating of AAA. They observed that our cash balance as a percent of operating revenues is slightly below the U.S. median. Any significant decline in fund balance could affect our bond rating and impact the cost of future borrowing to the county. It should be noted that maintaining the tax rate of 44.5 cents to fund the schools will generate more funds than is needed to fund their request, which will result in their fund balance continuing to increase. In working with staff and bond counsel, there are some specific motions that will need to be made this evening to ensure that the budget adoption is compliant. We have drafted these motions and I'm going to place them at your seats. Thank you for your attention, and staff and I are available to answer any questions that you may have. And the packet that I referred to is motion to adopt the budget, and as the board will see within that information, there are blanks based upon the decisions that you make this evening.
Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Jeff, what would the county tax rate be if we did the 5 cents total tax decrease? What would that number, fill in the blank, number be?
A total of 5 cents? Or, I'm assuming then, you're not talking in addition to the original 2.5, you're just talking an additional 2.5.
Additional 2.5 to the
2184.
21.2184.
2184. And that would require an appropriation of $6,531,140 of fund balance.
$6,531,140.
$6,531,140.
140.
Yes.
298.
All right. I'll go ahead and make the motion so we can start discussions. Good luck.
Go for it.
I move to adopt the FY 2019 operating and capital budget ordinance with the following changes. Approval of the county manager's recommended strategy to address social and emotional health and appropriate the $1.6 million reserves as follows: $435,287 to UCPS for 2 school counselors, 1 lead counselor, and a stipend for lead social working for training. In addition, to appropriate the remaining $1,164,713 to Human Services for additional school social workers and mental health therapists. Establish county tax rate at 21.2184 and adopt and appropriate $6,531,140 of general fund balance for operations, and providing one-time exception to the Board of County Commissioners fund balance policy to allow fund balance to be used for operating costs. Approve the following resolutions calling for the bond referendum for November 2018. Resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of North Carolina directing the publication of notice of intent to apply to the local government commission for approval of bonds. Resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Union County, North Carolina, authorizing the finance officer to apply to the local government commission for approval of the county's proposed general obligation bond financings and to submit such application to the local government commission. Resolution of the Board of Commissioners of County of Union, North Carolina, making certain statements of fact concerning proposed bond issue. Do you need any more? That's it, right?
I believe that covers the bond items, tax rate, as well as the change in the manager's recommendation concerning $1.6 million resources.
Mr. Helms.
Yeah, the only thing I ask is that, do we need to include in that each project needs to be a line item like the schools and libraries were last time?
That's already done as we've done in prior years. For example, ADA, safety and security is the categories, and that is how we propose the budget this year as well.
All right.
We have a motion, any discussion? Hearing none, I will make a few comments with regard to the motion. I can't support the motion for a number of reasons. One being any further reduction in the tax rate. When we had our first meeting and started to discuss cutting taxes as a board, we went from a penny to a penny and a half and quickly to 2.5 pennies on the county side. And I commend Manager Cotto and her staff for, despite the look on her face when we said 2.5 cents, continuing to work with staff and working with the department heads and coming up with a number that gave us the 2.5 cents and hopefully maintain county operations and services. The other concern that I have is relative to the 44.5 cents for the schools. Early on in our budget discussions, there were certainly comments from this board with regard to the need for public schools to certainly scrutinize their budget, and with what appeared to be a strong economy and the offer that they were going to be able to satisfy all their needs requested, certainly consider a tax cut on their side as well. Sharing the gain and sharing the pain, as I once heard a chairman of the school board say. The other final item has to do with the bond, and I've said this several times with regard to the bond. We, as a board, several years back, I guess it was about 2010, maybe 11, we established priorities for the board, and our number one priority since 2010 and remains today is public safety. And I know the 911 center and the sheriff's jail needs have been, the sheriff's office needs have been at the top of our critical list for a long time. I certainly support public safety. I believe that's the role of government, and so I will support those two bond projects. There are other projects that come up from time to time that some people would consider a want more so than a need. When you look at the 4-H pavilion from my shoes, I consider it to be a need. I have 8 grandchildren, and I've worked with a lot of young people throughout my career, and I know the importance of learning by doing. We had a young man this evening with a drape of merit badges and all of those, said that he had got his hands dirty and participated in those activities such that he knew about them. Our food supply, how it's produced, how it gets to the table, is of dire importance in this country. We continue to move further and further away as a society, away from food production, almost to the point where farmers are being challenged about the food they produce. I believe that the 4-H pavilion could offer opportunities for young people to grow. I believe it would be in a county that ag production is third largest in the state at the farm level in terms of farm income, and number one in many commodity categories. I certainly think it would be beneficial to the county as a whole. We worked for more than 2 years talking to stakeholders throughout the ag community about the kind of facility that we wanted and needed, and the cost of that facility has grown to the point that there were many concerns on the Agricultural Advisory Board as we discussed the project about the cost and the escalation of the cost. We had an opportunity, I think, to phase that facility in, to get our feet wet a little bit, to be able to provide for the kids, while at the same time testing the waters to see how much that facility might be used and to continue on with the project. One of the things I have stood by as a commissioner is I will do all that I can not to increase your taxes. And when I joined this board, Union County had the highest, I believe it was first in the state, and the highest per capita debt of any county in the state. And over the past 8 years, we've reduced that significantly, and I will continue to make every effort to do that. So for those 3 reasons, I cannot support the motion. Commissioner Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Simpson. And I understand the feelings on this, and I understand comments made from other commissioners in the past. But what we're doing here is no different than what we ask Union County Public Schools to do. The money that came to Union County Public Schools in the $6.5 million was $800,000 roughly in monies that was refunded for being overbilled for utilities. And the other monies came from various sources such as fines. If you get a speeding ticket, I don't know if a lot of people know this, your money goes to the schools. If you get a red light ticket, that's the reason they did away with the red lights, because the red light tickets were supposed to go to the schools too, and the municipalities weren't doing that and didn't want to do that, so that's the reason we don't have red light cameras anymore. So those are the monies that they built up over many years, just as we built up money over years. So asking them to take the bond money that they thought they were going to use for bond overages, if they had any, and to use it would be no different than what we're doing. So I feel completely comfortable in the 5-cent rate, because that still leaves us with approximately $0.015 value on the tax rate that can be used to pay for the bonds if the bonds are passed. The value on the bonds that were passed for the libraries, for SBCC, and for the schools were roughly $50,000 each, or $50 million each, I'm sorry. So that $50 million, if a penny and a half covers the payments on those bonds, that would not require a tax increase next year for the bond that would be passed if the voters choose to pass it, which I completely support all three of those things, and will be voting for them in the bonds. But this is something that, year after year, we have done well and done a lot better. We come in and we don't have the money, and it's dire straits, and then we raise taxes, or even lowering taxes, we come back with more money than we expected to have. So for that reason, I support it. I think it is sustainable. It's just as sustainable as the 5 cents would have been had we taken it from the schools. So I would appreciate the consideration and maybe reconsideration to accept it, because it's no different than what we were doing before.
Commissioner Rushing, if I might just provide one clarification. When we recommended the 2.5 cent tax rate reduction as it related to those monies that go to Union County Public Schools, it was one-time funding for one-time projects. It was not to fund their ongoing operations. By reducing our tax rate to this level, you are taking one-time funding and we are supplanting operating expenses into the future, which my concern is not sustainable, and that I am concerned that this organization will find itself in a year or two in having to raise taxes because of the fact that you did use one-time money to fund operations.
I appreciate it, Madam Manager.
Mr. Helms.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I appreciate and respect Chairman Simpson's passion for the 4-H arena. I would ask for consideration because the 4-H arena, as designed, will only impact very minimal portion of our population. I would ask that it, and you said it has to go back and study it some more before we put it on the bond, but I'd ask you to consider making this an arena kind of like Cabarrus, one that's enclosed, that can be used for other venues such as high school graduations, concerts, and things of that nature, and make it an economic generator for Union County. So I'd ask that that be considered when you're preparing the statement for the bond, and hopefully we can get a bond passed to have a venue that the entire county can utilize and appreciate. Also, I'll say that, for years I have heard that 20% got us to the top of the heap, that, the bond referendums, the economy of the bond referendums and everything, and now I'm being told it's higher. I don't know. A couple months ago I heard we had $26 million. Then it was 11. Then it was 5. And that's 10.4. I really don't know what to believe. But I concur with Commissioner Rushing that I think this is a manageable proposal, and we can move the county forward and save the taxpayers some money as well.
Further discussion? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay.
Nay.
I believe that takes us to new business.
Chairman,
Yes,
can I ask a
sir.
question?
Sure.
Should we discuss the other attachment that was sent out in the operating ordinance? I think there's some items in there that impact our budget, and some items that have got us in trouble a little bit this year with the schools. And I'd like the opportunity to discuss that a little bit.
I would assume we need to suspend the rules, Jeff, would that be right? And add that as an item for discussion, since we just had the motion and voted on it? Okay, we'll do that. Yes, sir.
Adding that item, I also suggest to you, the clerk has been provided a condemnation resolution. The board may want to consider adding those to the agenda as well. They were not on the original agenda.
Okay. All righty, we're going to suspend the rules, and we're going to discuss item 21, which Commissioner Helms had asked for. We will discuss the other information Commissioner Helms had asked for right after that. And then we will add the condemnation resolution right after that. And then we'll go to appointments to boards and committees. Clear on that, Ms. Clerk, Madam Clerk? So, Commissioner Helms, item 21.
Okay, item 21 is has been a very hotly contested motion by the DOT to add a rail siding between Mineral Springs and Waxhaw. And I don't know about the rest of the commissioners, but my email box is lit up with opposition to this because it means closing a major road, either Collins or, I'm drawing a blank right now, one right down next to Mineral Springs. Either one of them would create some hardship on the community. So there was a resolution presented to the Waxhaw town and also the Mineral Springs town. They both supported it. And it's a resolution that asks that the DOT do further study to understand the impact of closing these roads. And it also comes into the fact that the Waxhaw Parkway, the future parkway, comes in right near Collins, and so it creates the potential of two huge, very expensive bridges over the railroad that just a quarter mile apart. So what we're asking in the resolution is to ask the DOT to further study it, and I can say that our transportation planner, Bjorn Hansen, has been working very diligently to try to answer the citizens' concerns and also look for options that may minimize the impact. And I got a call from Bjorn this afternoon, and that's the reason I asked to move this out. So, Bjorn, can you come up and explain? He's done some personal digging that I'm excited that he took it upon himself to do this, to look for alternatives that may not create the negative impact on part of our citizens along that strip. And Bjorn, if you'll tell us a little bit about that, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Helms. This map of the vicinity of the project has a big yellow rectangle showing the estimate of the Waxhaw Parkway corridor. Of course, there is a comprehensive transportation plan that does show an alignment, but it's not funded. It's not really designed for purposes of construction, so really this box is the area of influence, and there are quite a few residents in this area, this large lot neighborhood, who have concerns about that, and rightfully so. This CSX project that would be built by the railroad, that would be built by the NCDOT, was proposed last year as a part of several projects that the NCDOT wanted submitted for this round of project evaluation and funding. And they weren't going to advance projects unless they had the consent of the locals, which at the time there was, because this project was described as a 14,000-foot siding in unincorporated Union County east of Waxhaw, period. That's it. As well as multiple other projects, one of which was a Helms Road grade separation immediately west of Waxhaw, which was very controversial about a year ago because it was related to a Torrey Path closure of a railroad crossing immediately west of town, as well as it relates to the large mill bridge development in Waxhaw. So this was proposed last fall. It was submitted, scored, and since last fall, the NCDOT revised the scope of the project. They added this bridge to it. They put it at Collins Road, but if you ask staff, they said, it has to go somewhere. If we're going to have a railroad crossing through here, it could as easily be McNeely Road. They're roughly equivalent in the DOT's mind for purposes of closure versus routing. Whichever one would get the grade separation would remain open. The other one would be closed and rerouted. And this wasn't known to us until it was received in May. And I'll be honest, we didn't catch it until after the TCC meeting. This was just a change in the text, and last time I thought about it was 6 months prior when it was submitted for scoring. And then we realized that, well, this is different, and Collins Road, how did this decision get made? Because initially, we were talking about possibly putting on the west side of town. And so we asked the DOT, well, why wasn't the west side considered at this point? Why did it go to east side? And they said, well, because we didn't want to go into South Carolina. I said, well, why not? You have the authority on the CSX's rail line, correct? And they said, yes. The only issue is that there's the Hector Road railroad crossing, which if you've ever been along NC 75 and crossed over in South Carolina, it's the one crossing that exists in Lancaster County. It is a terrible road. It's barely 10 feet. It's falling apart. It does connect into the backside of the Walnut Creek development, which is approximately 2,000 homes. And it's not really used for travel, but it could be for emergency purposes. And the DOT said, well, we don't have the authority to make any railroad crossings and closures in South Carolina, so we didn't go out to that side of town. But since then, I asked, well, I'm going to contact Lancaster County and see what they think, because this project scored very well because it included railroad crossings as well as a siding. And I said, well, there's already over a mile of siding on the west side of Waxhaw. You could use this and cut your cost. Also, the Helms Road crossing over NC 75, over the railroad tracks to connect back into NC 75, is supported by Waxhaw and the county. And potentially Lancaster County could benefit from this connection as well, because that Walnut Creek development connects into Millbridge in 3 different places. And so I called the planning director for Lancaster County on Thursday. She was positive about the idea of it, pushed it on to the county manager. County manager had some questions that he emailed on Saturday. I called him this morning and we had a good conversation, and once I explained the overall arrangement, that it would include the grade separation and that it would be solely along the railroad, that'd be the only encroachment of the county, it wasn't a new line going anywhere. He felt that it was a very good trade-off, that it was a much better connection back to NC 75 than the connection they currently have. It's has the opportunity for trucks to bottom out on it, so it's really not any kind of an emergency route in a real situation where you need to move things. So having a bridge properly designed is a much more appropriate connection. I've spoken with the NCDOT about this, the project manager for shepherding these projects through the process, and he said, if this is supported by the locals, we can make this work. This is a perfectly fine accommodation and change in the scope. We'd have to get it rescored in order to be considered in time for the MPO to make its decision in July, but he didn't think that was going to be too difficult to do, and he appreciated the research on the South Carolina side because he understood the sensitivity to the Collins and McNeely Road connections, as well as the potential concern about feeling that the Waxhaw Parkway was being set in a certain location by having the bridge located on Collins Road. And so that has all been occurring over the last 72 hours. It's a dynamic situation, but we've received good feedback both from Lancaster County and the NCDOT regarding this. The MPO will be considering these. They'll be hearing public input on Wednesday night at their meeting. They will not be taking action, but they'll be deliberating. There will be updates from the rail division about this very issue. They're traveling from Raleigh because of this. And our hope is that if it is in fact supported by Lancaster County, because they've had to push it to their commissioners this afternoon for feedback as well, this will be the first they've heard of it, provided there aren't any issues brought up. This could advance and be a replacement project because of this issue. And so this is very new information, certainly newer since it went before Waxhaw last Monday or Tuesday night, and then before Mineral Springs on Thursday night. We've been trying to react to the situation. We know these are both needed projects, and we're trying to identify the right project with the minimal amount of resident and business conflicts. So we'll try and answer any questions that you may have.
Bjorn, I think our conversation this afternoon is that if the board passed this resolution, it would not harm the negotiations, but it would send a message that all 3 entities that are affected by this are of like mind, that there needs to be more thought. And fortunately, with your diligence, we've got something to give them. Is that a fair statement?
That is true. I believe that would send the right message to motivate everyone to come to the table, particularly particularly CSX, with flexibility about the project so that as they consider working with us, they don't take us for granted or take advantage of us, that we play a role in the transportation planning process and they can't just run roughshod over us.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we adopt the resolution of the Union County Board of Commissioners to approve, reading the wrong one. Resolution on CSX siding regional tier non-highway project spot ID R171148.
Have a motion, discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none.
Thank you for your work, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And that takes us to your other item,
Okay.
Richard.
I think one of the things that I assumed it was a part of the budget process, and a couple of things that, and we've set the tax rate so we know how to fill that in. In Section 3, B, C, and D, I think using D as an example, what got us in trouble was the 44.5, and the 44.5 was communicated to the schools that, you know, find out what the revenue is in 44.5 and it gets you what to work with. Well, that was not what the 2.5 cents said that was requested to take down. So I think it's important that we make the statement here now that next year the schools will be appropriate to the revenue and their need, and it may not be 44.5. And I think we've discussed that, but I'm talking about addressing your need. But I don't want you misled like I feel like you were this year. And it's if you look at the tax rates, I just soon stop these. I'll take these off the tax roll, the 1.03 for fire, because I have individuals telling me I'm paying 2 fire taxes. I think it's misleading and confusion. We know how we're going to utilize the tax dollars. It's part of our process. On Section 18, on the one of the things that came to mind on this, the manager made a life decision this week that she's going to retire in December 31st of this year. And we commend her on her service, and I know she'll look forward to spending time with the grandkids. And but we'll be in a transition. We'll be looking at a new manager and some new executive staff, and I would recommend that Section 2, then the appropriations transfer be $20,000 instead of $100,000. On Section 19A, we also modify the $100,000 down to $20,000 and eliminate Section B. You're looking like you got a question.
I think we're having trouble following. I know I am.
My understanding is that the board has adopted the ordinance.
Okay?
Is that correct?
Yes.
We did.
And you're proposing now amendments to that ordinance?
Well, that was my question. Was this a part of the budget ordinance?
Yes, sir.
Because we never had any discussion on it.
My understanding is that
The information that was sent out on June 15th included this entire package that you're going through right now. It had the tax rates, it had the manager's authorized level of signature, it had all of those. Those were all contained within the budget ordinance that was adopted this evening.
And the point being, it was sent out on June 15th.
Commissioners, we had 4 days to put together a revised budget.
Oh, I understand, and these are items that, if in the budget, that I think we should amend, if that's the case, that we have to do. There's some other items that I would like to remove, and If you look at section 25, I guess I have a question here, are the schools doing a monthly report in all these categories today?
Yes, they are.
Okay, all right. That was my question, if that's monthly or should that be quarterly?
If I may, Commissioner.
Okay.
The reason, these are unchanged from prior years. They've been this way for
I understand.
5 years. The reason we have the contracting authority in there the way that it is, as well as the transfer authority, is to authorize the speed of business. When we did this originally, and I think you were on the board at the time,
I was.
the idea was that at times it's necessary to go and get those contracts out. So within the general statutes, you have the ability to delegate a certain level of authority. And this, what this ordinance allows us to is then to do some of those things with certain reporting thresholds as the internal control. So, and as you mentioned tonight in the budget transfers, for instance, they're reporting on that. Those are the internal controls that allow you then to come back and see that, and we report on that. So those aren't new changes to this budget ordinance. Those are the same items that have been in there for, I believe 3 or 4 years or more.
And I understand, and your statement that I was on the board when we put on that was absolutely correct. I can tell you I've regretted that decision. Being a new commissioner, sometimes you don't have all the information. So I would like to see that. We're coming up on a lot of changes, and this policy being changed would help us transition to a new, untested manager in Union County. So having that policy set now and go forth, because I assume this document's good for 2018.
It's effective July 1st, 2019.
That's my thought.
I mean,
That's why-
2018, I apologize, for the fiscal year 2019 budget.
So, and then section 29, at 29, I would add a statement on the end of that to say by commission approval.
Mr. Helms, I take it these are recommendations and not asking for action this evening.
Well, no, I'd like to make a motion that we take action on those recommendations.
Is that your motion?
Can we get some clarification? Because I apologize, I was not following all the changes. I'm not sure.
I think we all
I'm not going
need
to
some
speak for the clerk,
clarification.
but I'm not sure she followed all the changes either.
Mr. Chairman, I think in order for the board to consider that, you would need to reconsider your earlier adoption of the ordinance. That would have to be made by someone voting on the prevailing side. The board would have to approve that, and then you could reconsider the ordinance as adopted and amend it. I do it that way out of concern that perhaps, well, I think that's a better approach in this case. Also, if we're to amend an ordinance, you have to be extremely clear as to exactly what it says. So we'll have to go through it piece by piece and make sure that there are additions and deletions just as it should appear.
Commissioner Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These issues that are in here, for example, with a new manager coming on, can we not change that authority any time during the year?
Yes, you may.
So we can change that?
Yes, sir.
These
Once
things-
I'm gone and you have someone else, yes, you
can
can
come down to
make
the
whatever
dollar.
changes you would like.
Are you saying that you have to be gone to make the changes?
No, sir, I am not.
Okay.
I'd go with I would probably stick with it as we've adopted it, and then look at these changes more in detail, come back at a later date,
I can do that.
keep from confusing issue.
That suffice?
That suffices.
Okay. Move on to resolution authorizing condemnation. We need to pass these out. I don't want to mess up, so. Just keep passing them down. It's like grammar school. It's all dulled together. See, we messed up anyway.
We're missing one and a half. Well, here's yours.
Frank and I'll share.
Oh,
We got a copy for everybody, just don't take it apart.
Don't take it apart, that's the key.
Mine is mine.
Okay, this is a resolution authorizing condemnation to acquire certain property or interest in property of temporary and permanent sewer easements. Manager, would you like to address the issue?
Certainly. At the board's May 21st meeting, the board did adopt the master plan as it related to the town of Waxhaw with respect to some improvements that were necessary associated with their downtown area. The board also approved approximately a year ago a project known as Blythe Creek Interceptor. As part of the process, we do go through I think it's 4 public notices and 4 hearings in which we meet with the potentially affected property owners and make them aware of a project. We have done so in this case. As the board is aware, that there are some property owners we have been unable to reach, and the county attorney has indicated his intent to continue to work through that. But in order for us to meet the commitment to the town of Waxhaw, and this is in compliance with your sewer master plan, it is necessary for us to proceed forward with condemnation with, I believe it's a total of 15 parcels out of 49. And this resolution would begin the process. My understanding, Mr. Long, is that there is then a 30-day clock.
The notice is finished in 30 days.
Thank you. And so staff is recommending that you adopt the resolution that is before you.
Motion to adopt the resolution authorizing condemnation. Discussion. Commissioner Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to be able to support the resolution tonight. I just can't. These resolutions contain actions that we've never done as a county, to my understanding, and I just believe that maybe in other areas we wouldn't be doing it the way we're doing it in this area. So with that said, and only that said, I'm not going to support the motion.
Mr. Helms.
I agree with Commissioner Rushing on this because, Edwin, you're here. Some of these properties are in your community. And my concern is that we can't identify who owns the property. And I know with your background, your family background there, that you might be able to add some insight or hold on a second, insight into it. And what I want to ask is that our attorney, Mr. Long, speak with you so you can look at this list and maybe help us find these individuals. Richard, is what, five locations that they can't find the ownership, and they're talking about going ahead and putting pipe in across property, and I'd really rather have the heirs or whomever them to have that understanding. So, that process hasn't been done, and I can't support it until we exhaust the opportunities and make sure that we're fair to your community. Not today. I'll talk to you more. Okay.
I am going to support the motion. We are not condemning anyone's property by this motion or this resolution. We're simply moving the ball forward in the process. We've had that assurance that we are not going to put a pipe in or condemn anyone's property. We're simply, this is a means to, we cannot identify these individuals. They won't respond to mailings. They won't respond to contact. We don't know who they are or where they are. This is simply a process to move us closer to a resolution. Any further discussion? Commissioner Rushing.
It is the resolution authorizing condemnation to acquire certain property for interest in property of temporary and permanent sewer easements. That's the form, that's what we're voting on, right?
We'll turn it over to legal.
Commissioners, you are absolutely correct. It is a resolution to do condemnation. It is not to do that which we've talked about, putting pipe in the ground at all. Without that, the resolution says nothing for this. This is the normal condemnation process. What we had a discussion about was what was in closed session, which we won't go into here. But that had nothing to do with the regular condemnation process. That is all you are approving today, is the regular condemnation process. Nothing more, nothing less.
Further questions or discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Yes.
I
did. I made a motion. I did.
Yes. Sorry.
It's okay. And if I'm not mistaken, that gets us to appointments to boards and committees. I did a lot of adding this evening. Workforce Development Board. Motion to, Ms. Walls has served, Mary Walls has served, and she wishes to continue to serve. She's applied for reappointment, so I would move that we accept her application. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. JCPC. Anna Goodwin, Jim Chafin, James Johnson, Monique Holt.
Motion to reapprove.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Agricultural Advisory Board, Gerald Mangum and Jim Howie. I believe, did every commissioner get a copy of the application for Jim Howie and Gerald Mangum have served faithfully and have reapplied for reappointment. So I would recommend their reappointment to the Ag Advisory Board. All in favor say aye. Aye. And then we have, that is all with the exception. I don't know if I need to amend the rules, but with the resignation of Lance Simpson, we have a vacancy as liaison to the Yadkin River Water Project. I serve on that group, and
We are actually bringing that to you on your July 18th
are you?
meeting.
Okay.
I apologize.
I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of the game.
Just a slight.
And we're not having a meeting until
July 16th.
later, or
Yes.
a board meeting
Right.
with Norwood
Right.
until later on.
So we thought we had a little bit of time with respect to that.
My apologies. Yeah.
If I might, while we're on that subject, the library board, I went to the last meeting and we'll be glad to continue to go, but I'd like to offer to Barbara if she would like to serve with the library board. If you'd like to do that, I think that would be of great interest to her, and would, since I'm just a temporary seat holder, would like to offer up her nomination for the commissioner representatives.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Good deal. Okay, takes us to
You just don't want to see me, Mr. Warner. What's tomorrow?
county manager's comments.
Yes, just one announcement that the board is already aware of, and my staff is already aware of. Commissioner Helms mentioned it earlier in the meeting, is I have advised the Board of County Commissioners of my intent to retire effective December 31st, 2018. And that is my only comments this evening.
Commissioner Harrison. Commissioner Akmus.
I was reminded through this whole process of Nancy Pelosi, who said, we've got to vote on the bill before we know what's in it. Well, I think we've observed that tonight. We approved a budget, and then we didn't know what was in it, so we tried to make a bunch of changes. I did not support the budget, and I'm going to tell you why. It was fiscally irresponsible. I don't run my household that way. I don't take my mortgage payment out of my savings account every month. That's essentially what your county commission has just done. I applaud them for the 5-cent tax cut, but the fact remains they were given an opportunity to provide a 5-cent tax cut that was a fiscally responsible plan that presented an opportunity to keep balanced operations, fully fund the school's request, and allow them to have a sustainable capital improvement program. They chose not to do that. Instead, they set aside $6.5 million in the school fund with your tax dollars and essentially gave them another $6.5 million. For what? We don't know, because we don't know if there's a bond project overrun or not. So that's why I didn't approve it. Again, I said it last week, disappointed in the actions this board took. With that, I wish everyone a good evening.
Mr. Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will make a comment in response to that. The school board had the opportunity to take $6.5 million and spend it any way they wanted to. Our home finance officer said that that money was not encumbered. That money was not bound to any project. It could have been used as operating expense. It could have been used to give birthday parties to every child in Union County Public Schools if they chose to do it. Instead, they chose a wise option, and that was to hold that money in reserve in case they had any problems with going over budget due to construction costs, due to other problems that might arise, and it's going to be there. And if they don't have those problems, since they were smart enough and wise enough not to spend the money but save the money, then I thought they would be smart enough not to spend it if they didn't need it. And that's why I recommended that we use the money that we had in our reserve and replace the money they had in their reserve to use it for the additional 2.5-cent tax cut. The voters have a choice now on the bonds. They can make the choice to approve the arena, which I support fully, and hope that it's built. I hope it's the best one in the state. I support the bonds for the Sheriff's Department. I support law enforcement. I think the voters will also support law enforcement. And I support the 911 center. I would rather see the new building than a lot of money spent in the old location. And I think the voters of Union County are wise enough to make that choice too. And not only that, we didn't spend everything that we could have spent. We have a 20% reserve policy. We're just talking about $10.4 million over that reserve policy that we had. Now we still have $3-4 million over that policy, even after the action that we took tonight, that we can use to offset cost in case the bonds are approved. But the voters will be able to choose that. And we require it of the school system. We should require it of ourselves. And that, I think that in future dealings with the school system, if we're straight up, they tried to do what was right. And I see that, and I appreciate that. And we have the members, some members of the school board that are here tonight. I want to thank you personally for what you've done, because your actions have reinstilled some faith in the school system. And I've talked to very big critics of the school system this week and told them what I would like to see, and they were completely appreciative of the things that y'all have done. So thank you. Commissioner Akins' view on the school system is not the view of the complete board. I appreciate what you've done. Thank you.
Mr. Helms.
This board's designed to have difference of opinions. I'm disappointed to hear being chastised because we have a difference of opinion. I feel comfortable with the changes. I feel comfortable with our situation with the schools. They have some latitude now to be able to go into their planning and make sure. I still ask them to be frugal and manage to what their budget is, but we're covered. If they don't use that money on those projects, we can apply it to future capital needs within the schools. So I think it's a good plan, especially since we have, I really don't know how much more money we've had, but we sure criticize the schools when they have a little extra. So we got to start walking like we're talking, and I hope we can be respectful to one another a little better in the future.
I'll just add one or two things. I was told one time to be sure you feed the grapevine with facts. I'm all for transparency and open communication, and not an effort to disparage any commissioner or disparage any school board member or anybody on either staff. We started, we've been through this budget process now about 3 times. And we started with the final meeting, going through line items and making changes. We worked as a board to be provided with more information, and the staff and the manager responded. We started in October with this year's budget and had numerous work sessions. As we neared the point of developing and adopting a budget, this board offered consensus to the manager and the staff to continue to move forward. We talked about the tax decreases. We talked about the tax rate. It's my understanding that that information was relayed to public school staff and the public school superintendent. You talk about misunderstanding. As I said in a previous meeting, the North Carolina legislature provides a statute that the county board of commissioners sets a tax rate, and that is what we are supposed to do. We did that. We were moving in that direction, and at the 9th hour, not once but twice, this board asked the county manager and her staff to go back and completely make alterations to that budget document that they've been working on since October. So I say that only to ask that in the future that we start early, that we communicate well, that we're all open and honest with each other as to what has been said and what has been relayed, and finally to offer my thanks to the staff, county manager and the county staff, particularly financial staff, department heads who took that cut on your side and have to deal with cuts on your side, or less revenue, less sources on your side, and the probably late hours that you folks spent trying to pull all this together so quickly. So I thank you for that. And with that, I'll offer a motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye.